Good evening to one and all. Today we have the webinar series on the theme Quality Assurance in CBSE Schools, the Need for SQAA. We have with us the Chairman CBSE, Sri Manoj Ahuja sir. We have also Sri Santosh Sarangi, Additional Secretary, Government of India. We have with us Sri K.K. Chowdhury and Sri Andarish Johari, Directors of CBSE. We have eminent panelists, Ms. Kalpana Kapoor, who will be the moderator of today's session, and Professor Sharad Sinha, Sri Sanjay Purohit, Ms. Madhu Aluwalia, and Ms. Kavita Anand. All the eminent panelists are experts in assessment of schools and various institutions, and they have a number of years' experience in this area. It's a wonderful opportunity to hear these eminent panelists. Before we go to the panel discussion, I request Honorable Chairman CBSE, Manoj Ahuja sir, to give opening remarks for today's session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. My colleagues at CBSE, Dr. Joshi, Mr. Chowdhury, Mr. Santosh Sarangi, Additional Secretary, Department of School Education and Literacy, distinguished panelists, Kalpana ji, Kavita ji, Sanjay, Madhu ji, and all others who have contributed significantly to the setting up of or finalizing the standards which we are going to talk about. It's been a great experience for CBSE with working with people who got deep knowledge on this subject. And I think the product which is going to be rolled out has the benefit of learning from a lot of experienced people in the field. Standards is not a new theme in the educational sector in India. We all know it's been a decade since we've been talking about standards. And a massive program called Shala Siddhi, where standards were set up and schools were given an IT platform to kind of bring about a change in the quality of the education system, was also rolled out. And they do offer us a lot of learning as we go forward. The National Education Policy talks about standards. And essentially these standards, the framework as CBSE is planning to come out, is more something like an ideal towards which the education system to move. We would use it like this. It's something like an prescriptive standards which schools at any level they are can use to go in one direction which is better themselves in terms of providing quality education. So it's not absolute in its sense. It's more relative. So wherever the school is, there are ways to improve themselves. So this is if in a nutshell, if you ask me, that is what the standards try to do. They are across several domains. It will be on pedagogy, it will be on management, it will be on leadership, it will be on school administration, and so on. The second important thing is, I think with technological changes, technology can make this product more useful and valuable for schools. And if thinking from the part of schools, they would be looking for something which is easy to do and follow. Doesn't take too much of learning on their part or too much of understanding or too many changes initially on their part to understand what these standards mean. They should be able to provide information which is sought on their own very easily based on these standards. And third, make sense. There would be numbers and indices which say so much weightage to this standard or so many marks for these standards, which are metrics, but metrics can also confound and can also distill. And I think the challenge before us to distill whatever information has been put in by the schools in a very simplistic and easy manner. So that then the school, once it does understand what is it, where I need to move, And then if we are able to do that, then how do I move? Can we empower the school through systems, through resources, both digital and human, with whom the school can connect and improve? So I think it's more with standards. There are two ways of looking at it. One is more a regulatory role, that these are the standards and you should reach, and the other is like here it's more a guiding force, more descriptive. And it is in this way that CBSE, at least in our own schools, would like to roll out these standards. Empower the schools. I think we believe and trust that the schools would want to improve. Then can we empower them, give them the resources, and provide certain guidelines where they can, to a very large extent, not have to be dependent on, let's say, systems or actors outside their schools or outside the system created by SQAA to improve. So that is what I mean by empowerment, that you are providing the tools to the school themselves to improve. And here I was referring to technology. So this time we'll be basing it on technology, which Sanjay ji is here. I mean, he has a lot of experience in this. Kavita ji is there, and she's been doing it across a lot of schools, and we would bank on them to further, improve or make it more reflective of the results we want to see, so that schools are able to easily, with IT systems, put in information, understand what it means, and then have access to huge resources. I think the big advantage of technology is that you can connect globally with the best and at scale, which, when we are talking about large number of schools, is of immense benefit. So I think that is all. I think this is just what I just wanted to set the tone. But again, we are immensely grateful and thankful to all the extreme panelists here who have spared their valuable time to come here, and for the immense contributions they're making for the SQAA framework. And I look forward to listening to all of you. And I would also request the participants and the other listeners who are connected to this webinar to do give us their feedback. We'll put in systems for feedback. So please do give in their feedback about what is being discussed and what do they feel. Because I think it's an evolving process, and the SQAA, if I can call it a product, would also evolve with times and improve, so that it can serve the purpose it is set out to have, which is what is our intention. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for setting the context and explaining the philosophy of SQAA to everyone present here. Thank you, sir, for your brief explanation on the SQAA requirement, as well as what we are looking for from the schools through the SQAA process. For giving today's keynote address, we have with us Sri Santosh Sarangi, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Education, Government of India. Sir is an IAS officer from the Orissa cadre. At present, he is also holding the additional charge of Chairman, National Council of Teacher Education. He has been Principal Secretary to Government of Orissa and has held various other important positions in the Government of Orissa. Sir, we are fortunate to have you here with us today, and all our schools and school leaders and teachers are waiting to hear from you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Joseph, Chairman CBSE, and all the esteemed panelists and participants. I had the opportunity to hear the initial presentation on SQAA, which was made, and I can see a lot of faces that I saw the other day. And I must compliment the CBSE and the entire team of experts who helped CBSE in drafting such a assessment and accreditation framework at such a granular level. I think all the aspects which refer to quality of education, which refers to benchmarking the school standards in terms of infrastructure, in terms of pedagogy, in terms of assessment, all of it has been covered. And while covering this, the centrality of the student in the learning process has been kept in mind. So balancing issues of school infrastructure, the teacher resources, along with keeping the interest of the student in mind is a tough job, but I think you have done an excellent job in balancing this. NEP, as such, envisions India to become a knowledge society through a vibrant development of quality of education in the school system. School is the foundation of our education system, and quality, ensuring quality of education is foremost among our priorities. At the Government of India level, we have been looking at quality through various indices, through various indexes, like the School Education Quality Index, which is monitored by Niti Aayog. The R department has a performance grading index. We also have SDG India Index, which monitors this quality. But through SQAA, you have taken it to a very granular level, taking it to the school level, and creating that aspiration in the mind of the school to benchmark itself among the very best. So, from that point of view, giving this aspiration to the schools and ensuring that schools try and reach the next level of this standard is actually very laudable. And what is more important here is that this is not intended to be an imposition. This is not intended to be another Inspector Raj, where an inspector is going and trying to assess the standards in the school and prescribing things. What is another laudable feature of this work is to ensure that this is more in the form of self-assessment, self-disclosure, and an aspiration to rise to the next level. So from that point of view, the extent to which these standards on pedagogy, on assessment, on infrastructure, on human resources, on leadership abilities in the schools will actually provide and incentivize the schools to go to the next level in the standards framework. So I would compliment all of you for having contributed hugely and immensely to development of these standards, and I look forward to its adoption by the schools in a voluntary manner and with a lot of motivation and lot of excitement among the schools. So looking forward to hearing some of you while going forward. Thanks for organizing me and thanks for making me a participant in this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your inspiring words and also for encouraging our schools to create an ecosystem for providing quality education and making a difference in the lives of our children. I hope the schools will definitely move on to the path of bringing quality in their systems. Thank you, sir, once again. Now, moving on to the next segment of the program, we will have a panel discussion on the theme of quality assurance. And today we have with us a very talented team of panelists who will help us to understand the concept of quality assurance from the with reference to the schools. Their profiles do not do justice to the amount of work they have been doing and the impact they have on the individuals and the organizations. Their work speaks a volume. Now, introducing to you the panelists, we are fortunate to have with us Ms. Kavita Anand, Founder Director, Adhyan Quality Education Services and Adhyan Foundation. She is well known for her social entrepreneurship and single-minded focus on bringing quality to schools through leadership development. Ms. Kavita strongly believes that the process of audits, when placed in the hands of insiders within the school, will change perspectives from scrutiny to self-evaluation and reflection. We welcome you, ma'am. And then we have with us Mr. Sanjay Purohit, Chief Curator of Societal Thinking at ICSEF Foundation. His experience spans senior leadership roles in corporate strategy, digital transformation, management consulting, and sustainable development. He is a strong believer in co-creating pathways for a resilient society and has a simple mantra for a school revolution. That is sense, make sense, learn, and grow. We welcome you, sir. Then we have with us Professor Sharat Sinha. She is a professor at Department of Teacher Education in CRT. Her areas of interest include curriculum development, learning achievement surveys, teachers' professional development, adolescents education, then guidance and counseling, vocational education, then use of ICT, capacity building of various stakeholders for effective implementation of quality aspects in the field of education. We welcome you, ma'am, to this webinar. Next, we have with us is Madhu Aluwalia, management expert, trainer, and educationist. She is a senior advisor at Quality Council of India. As a head of the school division at QCI, she has spearheaded projects under National Accreditation Board for Education and Training, that is NABIT, with operations spread across the globe. We welcome you, ma'am. Then to moderate the session, we have with us Ms. Kalpana Kapoor, a leadership coach, mentor, and master trainer. She has been in the field of education for the last 38 years and well versed in the latest trends in the field of school education. She is currently into leadership programs on transformational leadership on one hand, and on the other provides strategic initiatives to build healthy, happy, and robust organizations. We welcome you, ma'am. Now, thank you to all of you for being here with us. Now I hand over the stage to Kalpana, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, you are on mute.
Yeah, thank you and a very good day to all of you, and a warm welcome to all our guests and the audience across the country. And I hope I have your permission to the panelists this question, that to use your first name if it's okay with you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we'd like to make the discussion informally formal, right? So I think to make sense, what Sanjay says is first to try and shed off our inhibitions. So thank you so much for making me feel comfortable there. In today's times of economic stress, uncertainty, haves, have-nots, technological changes, school leaders have all rallied together and become our education warriors. So I would like to take this opportunity to salute all of them for really putting in so much of effort, time, patience in dealing with the challenges which were related to the pandemic, and at the same time struggling with the aspect of trying to provide quality during this time. The implementation of NEP, as Manojji and Santoshi have said, they need all our skills to apply our learning of resilience, adaptability, empathy, compassion, critical and creative thinking, not only for our own schools, but for all the schools that need support, encouragement, mentorship, and individually and collectively, if we can all get together and make a difference in the educational ecosystem. So I hope that all of us are going to do it together. Today's theme, quality consciousness in schools, with the emphasis on need for school quality assessment and assurance. And today's session, if it provokes us into reflecting, introspecting, analyzing, and evaluating the choices we have made with regard to learner-centered outcomes, if it makes us aware of that, I think we've done justice to this 1 hour that we have today. And also make us think, are we doing enough? That's a food for thought for all of us present across the country. So thank you to all the panelists for being here with us, as well as the audience. My question number 1 is a rapid fire for all the panelists here, which is, in a word or one sentence, can you describe what quality consciousness means to you? I'll repeat, in a word or a sentence, tell us what quality consciousness means to you. Starting with Sanjay.
So one word is improve, and in a sentence, the ability to continuously sense, make sense, learn, and improve.
Thank you, Sanjay. Over to Sharan.
Yeah, quality consciousness to me means that being aware, conscious of all the dimensions that contribute to quality, and be ready to unlearn and relearn. It's
Okay.
very dynamic for me.
Okay. Madhu?
For me, a quality consciousness in education domain primarily means that it's readiness, alertness of a school for meeting the expectations, need of interested parties like students, parents, society, amongst other.
Okay. Thank you, Madhu. And Kavita?
So for me, it's a bar. It's a way of saying what is it that is the minimum expectation for everyone, and that is quality consciousness. Yeah. What could you
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. And it reinforces the setting of context by Mr. Manoj and by Mr. Sarangi, whom I'm very impressed that they both have read the manual thoroughly. So that was pretty impressive. And if we look at all the responses of sense, make sense, learn, grow, being aware of all kind of dimensions, learn, unlearn, readiness, alertness, meeting the needs of stakeholders, and what is the minimum that we can do in our schools. Nowhere does it talk about the Gabbar Singh of the standards hanging heavily over our heads. Right? So I'm so thankful to you for setting the context for what is quality consciousness. And Madhu, actually, some part of your questions already been answered by Mr. Manoj and by Mr. Sarangi. But my question to you is that no one school's experience can be applied or replicated to another school. Since all our schools are very unique, their situations are unique, their combinations of theories, practices, methodology of learning are very unique. So each school is unique in itself. And what do you think is the need for CBSE's framework on SCORE? Is it only a scorecard to track and enforce educational quality, like what Mr. Sarangi said? Are we looking at inspection, Raj, coming back? Or what do you think are the key features that will help our unique and diverse schools to understand the concept of quality better?
So you have asked me three, I'll answer them in three parts. One is what is the need of SQAA? Second is scorecard. Is it just merely a scorecard? And the third one is key features. Okay.
Yeah.
So when the SQAA was getting designed, as you said, the school is a unique school. I mean, each school has different characteristics. No school is a bad school. Every school is a good school. They have certain strengths. They have certain improvement areas. When the standard was getting designed, the main objective was that every school, whether it's in any rural area or a semi-rural area, should have minimum quality standards, should be a self-descriptive. A school should be able to understand the standard and should be able to know how to imbibe the standard, adapt the standard, more focus on, rather than somebody coming and doing an inspection, the standard lays stress on a lot of self-assessment.
Okay.
Peer assessment. That means school should come together and celebrate the strengths of a school. So the standard is designed in such a way that each one of them become a part of it. They do a lot of peer assessment, reflection, make progress, make improvement in the processes, understand, evaluate themselves, create benchmarks, create action plans, and then they move forward according to their school culture. Because standards lay stress on context of the school. That's a one parameter which everybody has to understand, that every school, you cannot compare one school to another. So as per the context of the school, the environment of the school, the ecosystem of the school has to move forward and then create their own progress plan. So this was the need of SQAA. Now, when the SQAA was created, there were certain performance indicators which we created in each domain. And those indicators have certain performance levels. So those performance levels will not give you a score. It will give you an indication. Where do you stand? What is the level? As I said earlier, that urban school probably will score high on infrastructure, but a semi-rural school may score higher on teaching learning practices. So that is a score which you will get on each indicator, which will give you where do you stand and how do you have to go to the next level. So that's the beauty of the standard, that it is not a scorecard. It will tell you your yardstick and how to move further. Now, what are the key features of this standard? The major one is that it's going to change the system from a person dependent to a system dependent. That's a very major thing that every school, we've conducted so many assessment, and schools struggle that if a good resource leaves the school, then the entire system comes to an halt. And this standard is going to give you to opportunity to make it more standardization your processes, so that your dependency on a person becomes less. Second major focus or feature of the system is self-assessment. Nowhere we are going to say that you will undergo an inspection later. We are saying every school has to look at themselves. They have to take a dipstick. They have to do a self-assessment. So a lot of focus has been laid on self-assessment. Basis on that, the standard which what we have created has a very simple language, very simple rubrics. How do you come to level 1, 2, 3, 4? Everything is written in a very simple way so that a school can understand. We have conducted assessment and we know that how school struggles. It has a maturity model, as I said. Level 1, 2, 3 will not give you score, but will give you level of maturity. That where do you stand now? If you are at 1, you have to go to the 2 and 3 and 4. There are 4 levels. So those are one maturity model. It's not a one-time exercise. A lot of self-retrospection, constant review monitoring, and the best part is a lot of focus on benchmarking and stakeholder, beneficiary satisfaction. Because these are the features of, in a nutshell, a standard has been designed with.
Thank you, Madhu. I think that was very clear, and the features of SQAA, which is very self-explanatory, its simplicity and its reach to all kinds of schools, and using it as a learning model so that you grow from one level to the other and becoming more self-dependent on your own system rather than dependent on somebody else. So very beautifully put. Thank you so much. My next question goes to Sanjay. Sanjay, our education system, we know over the years, is replete with suggestions, policies, frameworks for creating high-performance schools. Very beautifully worded policies. Maybe the SQAA is also a beautifully worded one. But I think all of us know that the execution is going to be extremely important. So, unfortunately, we have not been able to implement these policies over the years in the spirit in which they have been designed. So, with your huge experience of working on societal changes, what do you think will be the challenges at school leadership level while implementing changes that focus on learner outcomes in alignment with NEP?
Thank you. That's a very important question. So our national education policy proposes important and significant changes towards aspects of learning outcomes, schooling structures, many key processes like capacity building. And the spirit of that is captured well in the design of SQAA, which essentially is an important foundation to get this cycle of, as I was mentioning before, sense makes sense, learn and improve going. But this involves a significant effort in managing change towards our desired future. Having paint and becoming a painter are two very different things. Change management is always difficult. I have always believed that I struggle to change myself and hence claim no success in changing any system whatsoever. And mindsets and culture shifts are difficult to orchestrate. The current situation due to the COVID pandemic makes it even more difficult. Our brave school leaders are like captains of a ship that is sailing amidst a rising storm in an unknown area. So now you are handling cycles of change which are induced because of your environment and the need to achieve a better level of performance. And so it's getting more and more difficult. I think at the same time, we have to work through these changes. We owe it to our children, more importantly. We have to work through the whole cycle of managing change. And so I believe it is important for us to be more thoughtful and supportive of how we drive this change.
Okay.
Let me highlight 4 or 5 challenges, like you asked the question, and these are all enhanced challenges. These are challenges on steroids because of the current situation. The first big challenge is sharing a sense of shared purpose to excel. In spite of all the difficulties, in spite of all the limitations, that purpose to excel in the middle of all this unfolding uncertainty, how do we create that purpose as we roll out this transformation leveraging SQAA? The second is inspiring school teams to plan and make improvements. While facing repeated disruptions, as you have seen in the last 18 months, you plan, you get disrupted, you plan, you get disrupted. And this seems to be the order of things, at least in the near term. So how do you still create that grit and that ability to plan and make improvements while you know that disruptions are uncertain? The third thing I believe is strengthening the capacity of the school teams. It's not only school leaders, it is school leadership. It's a system of multiple people in a school. It is not one person. It is all the people who are trying to make a difference. How do you help them sense where they are with respect to some sort of a standard? For example, now it is SQAA, to understand where are we, make sense vis-a-vis where our goals are, where others are, where the ecosystem is, where the benchmarks are, where the children are, where the parents are. How do we understand where are we in this system? Decide where should we make improvements, learn how to make that improvement. Because we assume that if we tell people that they should improve XYZ, they know how to do it, but that is not fair. Then how do we help people learn how to make that improvement? And then actually, in a disciplined, structured way, make that improvement happen. So I think it is not the discipline of assessment that I worry more about. It is the discipline of actually making the change on the ground, even if it is small, simple, basic. The fourth thing I believe is energizing parent participation, because as we go through this flux, we have to take the parents along because they are dealing with this pressure as much as the schools are. And many of them may be actually dealing with livelihood stresses. So the ability to make this transition while worrying about sustainability of their own lives is an important element, and taking them into confidence is important. Lastly, I think one of the big important aspects in achieving learning outcomes is to improve the mental well-being of our children. Because many of them are growing up under isolation and they're growing up under this transition and change. So I think when we are working with a frame like SQAA, it is important for us to also place it in the emergent situation and then make the right calls and manage that change so that the change is relevant to the times at hand. And I think in summary, the time to change, to improve is now. We don't have a moment to lose. And I think it all begins by our leaders setting that purpose, that making an improvement every day is the essence of this entire process. I remember walking into the room of a school principal one day, and behind her chair was a poster which says, "Do one thing every day that scares you."
Okay.
And I think that is the essence of the journey of making change. Let us all do one thing every day that takes us beyond our brief, that takes us beyond our comfort zone. And that's when SQAA is super useful to help us make that transition.
Thank you, Sanjay. Very beautifully put. And I can only kind of recap the 5 things that you said, that, leaders, educational leaders, whether they are principals or school teachers or parents or students, that they need to keep in mind, especially the leaders who are going to be driving this change. The first one was, I think, the steroids in today's days and times with the pandemic situation coming in, where you said that there is a shared purpose to excel. Are we all in the same boat? Are we all in the same wavelength? So do we really need to excel is something we need to ask ourselves. Second one was inspiring school teams to manage the change. There are disruptions happening, as you said, all the time. So how do the school teams manage change? Sometimes they don't even know how to do it. So if everybody can get together, whether it is the neighborhood schools or hubs of learning or CBSE or organizations that can help them to face the change. Third, you said was strengthening capacity building of schools, letting them make sense of where we are, where do we need to go, where are we in terms of the reality as on today, how do we need to improve, and then, kind of learn and grow and evolve. And the discipline of making a change, the change management, is something we should all be aware of. The fourth was energizing parent participation, because they have been equally a participant in the whole process, and some of the livelihoods, fee issues, other things. So kind of empathizing also with the parents of what they are going through. And the fifth one, last but not the least, improving the mental well-being of students, and I might add, even the well-being of teachers, school leaders, managements who are in that, kind of situation where they don't know whether they should run the schools or close down the schools. So that's something that empathy and compassion will have to be the first driving force for all of us, right? So thank you, Sanjay, for those lovely words. My next question is to Kavita. So Kavita, two quick questions for you. How do you think school leaders can set their own personal vision? Moving from what Sanjay just said, how can school leaders set their personal vision, the results and they wish to create? So I might have a very, kind of a visionary thing that I wish to create alongside a very realistic assessment of where we are today, the current reality. And how can our collective aspirations be used to set a direction in scenario as diverse as ours? You'll have to put yourself, on unmute, Kavita. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something that turns it to mute automatically, because every time I try and unmute and leave it unmuted because I'll forget to unmute. But anyway.
Yeah.
So I think you've positioned it as two questions, but they're very related and very linked questions, Kalpana. So I think it's a thing to be able to sort of look at it holistically. One is your own personal aspirations could be based on what you think as an individual. The thing is that the minute you're a school leader, you're not really you can't operate like an individual. Because I think it's easier to operate like one if you're, say, running a factory, or you're making, say, shoes. If you make a mess up and your shoes get all spoiled, you'll lose money and you'll have bad shoes which you'll have to dispose of. But if you are going to create a problem in the school for the parents, the students, the teachers, then you're kind of causing a problem for human lives, which is like in sort of incredibly large numbers. And that's just something that you can't do. So you stop thinking about yourself as an individual, really, when you start becoming a school leader, because you're then thinking about literally sabka bhala. You're looking at bhala of the teachers, bhala of the children, of the, every single person, every single student, the parent, everybody. And when you start thinking like that, then you will be interested in where are we right now? What is the reality check? What is the current situation? And you will think about what is everybody's aspiration, what are the expectations from the parents, from the students, from everybody. Now all of that can become extremely unmanageable if you don't have a sort of a framework like what SQAA is kind of offering, or any framework Shala Siddhi offers, or So if you were to look at what does a framework actually do, it takes those expectations and aspirations and checks them against what is best practice, right? And it says that okay, so you might say that, I want all, my students should all come at 90%, but the real question that is checked against best practice is that can the child become something that's the best version of themselves, rather than just becoming your aspirational idea of what a child should be. And therefore, you need to sort of look at a holistic way of understanding child development, understanding what is it that makes people begin to get a sense of self when they are about adolescent stages, getting an understanding of what's a pre-primary stage. So you have to understand a human being. You have to understand what is it that makes it possible for human beings to learn. And then you have to look at it in terms of what does best practice tell you to make that possible. Then you have to take that framework and make it possible for the students to understand it, the parents to understand it, your teachers to understand. Because that's when the dialogue begins with the expectation, aspiration, and the actual best practice and what it's trying to say, and your way of saying, look, let's all move together because I have to carry this entire shipload of people with me. So that's the school leader. It's a 360 to have like eyes at the back of your head, sides of your head. You have to have ears, nose, everything open. Your evidence collection has to sort of really at a level of 360 degrees, because what you are saying is, how do I understand what is best practice, aspiration, marry them, and move forward? And that's quite difficult. I'll give you a small example to make it a little bit more concrete. Say, for example, you have the idea that children must learn in a collective manner. That's what John Hattie will tell you, or other people who are in education will tell you. You have children's parents saying, but why should they work together? Because I don't know what my child has done in the class. So that's not a good idea. I want to know what my child has contributed. And you know that teachers find it really difficult to assess children because they say, we don't know exactly how this project got put together. So how are you going to then say, this is what it means to work collectively in the class, in groups? This is what it takes to be able to make that happen. This is how you can identify individual contributions, and this is what you can do to take it forward. Maybe you don't know it. Maybe you have to get help from a whole lot of other people. But who else is going to do it if you as a school leader don't? So that's your space. That's the space you occupy, of being able to actually help people understand abstract notions, bring it into the class and bring it into the practice of a school, make it real, and then make it move forward. Yeah. I hope that helps. Sorry, did I freeze?
Kalpana, you're on mute, please.
Yeah, sorry. So I'm also like Kavita, once I go on unmute. Okay. What I understood, I think, from all of this was that once you become a school leader, you're not just responsible for your own self, but you're also responsible for the school and the number of students, teachers, parents whom you're responsible to. And lovely analogies that you and Sanjay have given of being the captain of a ship, right? And you have to make sure that it moves and doesn't sink. Keeping especially our children in mind and keeping it student centric. And आपका एक और बहुत अच्छा जो आपने कहा, सबका भला. So keeping our stakeholders, or as Madhu said, beneficiary satisfaction. क्या हमारे बच्चों को फायदा हो रहा है? हमारे parents को, teachers को, principal को, management को, are they happy with this whole exercise of trying to learn, unlearn, make sense, and learn and grow? So that's very beautifully put, Kavita, where you are talking about marrying the best of best practices and then aspirations and trying to merge them and see हम कहाँ हैं और हम कहाँ तक पहुंच सकते हैं. तो अगर हमें कुछ नहीं भी आता है तो भी हम उसके बारे में सीख सकते हैं अगर हमारी अप्रोच सही है, हमारी अप्रोच पॉजिटिव है. सो अगर हम नहीं जानते हैं एक्सपीरियंशियल लर्निंग क्या होता है, कोऑपरेटिव लर्निंग नहीं होता है, लेकिन हम सोचते हैं कि ये बच्चों को फायदा होगा, तो वी विल गो ऑल आउट एंड मेक अ डिफरेंस. Yeah, was that the crux of what you were saying, Kavita?
That's right. Sorry.
Thank you, Kavita. Yeah. So going back to now, the policies and practices that might come up, which we are expected to follow as schools, और हम उसमें से देखते हैं कि हम क्या ले सकते हैं, क्या नहीं ले सकते हैं. So my question to Sharad is that the School Quality Assessment and Assurance, short form SQAA. The SQAA framework focuses on reflection, spirit of inquiry, developing awareness of attitudes, perception, अपने भी और दूसरों के भी. So जब आप policies create करते हैं, when you create content, policy documents, how do you address the mental models in education? लोगों की अलग-अलग सोच है different parts of the country में, लोगों के अपने attitude and approaches है towards education. So how does NCERT respond to that?
Thank you, Kalpana, for putting up that question. And it's a tough one, of course, because the diversity of the schools which NCRT caters to. On one hand, we have schools in the extreme areas, in the northeast, in all those areas which are unapproachable, and we have very elite schools in the metropolitan cities. So the diversity of the types of schools is immense in our country. The diversity of students is immense in our country, and similarly, the aspiration of parents, the teachers in all these schools also differ. So creating a document, creating as you call the policies or documents from NCRT, that's an uphill task, of course. And for the last 61 years, the NCRT is completely devoted to this task of research and creating documents based on research in the field of school education as well as teacher education. So, catering to the aspiration of the society per se, the aspiration of the parents, because it's a when we talk when we are talking about the school quality framework, and when we talk with respect to that, we feel that quality is something that benchmarks are constantly changing, constantly getting higher on some sides, and somewhere they are constantly changing. So we need to constantly reinvent ourselves according to the circumstances and according to the requirement of the society. For this, the NCRT has taken a key role in the research as well as training, and we have put up various initiatives in the past 61 years. Now when you talk of mental models, it's like we are catering to such a society where, suppose we go to a forest, a botanist says, oh, let us look about the type of species which are, or look at the ecosystem. And if a business person go, he will try to look up to the piece of the land, or an other person would like to look out in terms of a climate, a person dealing with climate or environment would like to look up to the environment aspect or climate change aspect of it, or a person related to agriculture will look up from the lens of what is the crop, how much produce will be there. So with this type of diversity, NCRT is catering, preparing documents. We keep into account the needs of the society. We try to be dynamic. We try to follow the policies, in line, align ourselves, our document with the policy, prepare documents in tune with them. And when we also focus a lot on the transactional strategies in the classroom, it's not only preparing a syllabus or a curriculum or a book or a curricular material. We focus more on the pedagogical strategies in order to achieve to those outcomes. So for that, this is a tough job. We prepare guidelines for the teachers. We do a lot of hand holding workshop, lot of in service. Of course, we have our own pre-service programs, also teacher education programs. So there are programs for teachers, teachers educators, capacity building programs, and recently the Nishtha program also, you must have heard of it. That is a combination of a program, a capacity building program for the teachers as well as school leaders. We've been doing it. So while we keep into account all the perspectives of genders, an inclusive classroom, the needs of the classroom. So any document which we prepare or any document which is placed before you goes through different tests, and different is viewed through different lenses. The lens of gender, lens of inclusion, and again returned again and again before it reaches to the stakeholder.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharad. I think that would be very useful to our school leaders who are listening in and tuning in, where there is so much of research that's happening and you are catering to different kinds of schools and keeping that in mind, whether it's gender, whether it's inclusivity. And I think the example that you gave of a forest ecosystem very beautifully sums up the NEP thought process of integration and no hard separation. right? So where you try to integrate everything and not look at things in isolation. And I'm sure all the different capacity building programs that are happening would be a great help to all our school leaders and our teachers. So thank you so much for that insight. So question to Madhu now is, when you're working on standards and becoming very technical and putting in performance indicators and standard operating procedures and the kind of evidences, so sometimes we get very overwhelmed with the evidences and so forth. Right. So I'm glad that this time the uploading of evidences is going to be relatively easier. So where schools will upload probably only any improvements that they may have done or any kind of action plan that they have, and not uploading 100 evidences onto the portal. Right. So my question to you is that, when we do all of this, we lose sight of the emotional quotient of our human resources when we are getting too much into the technicalities. So how is this stakeholder-centric leadership, that means sabka bhala, right, catered to in SQAA?
We have to understand one thing, that today's scenario, yardstick of determining the quality of a school is how students or parents perceive the services being provided by the school. So the standard, you rightly said that, emotional quotient brings a very, very prominent, place here, because standard gives a full opportunity for a stakeholder. Stakeholder can be an internal stakeholder or an external stakeholder, parent, student, society, teacher, principal, teaching staff, non-teaching staff. So everybody becomes a stakeholder. So in this standard, the entire domain has been given preference to voice out their opinions, to enable them to do the entire assessment. So one full domain contributes on beneficiary satisfaction. So there are various satisfaction index gets created, be it a teacher or a principal or parent or student. So it gives a lot of focus on involvement of teachers, student councils, parents involvement, the society involvement, their enablement to conduct the entire exercise very beautifully. So earlier, a lot of evidences were getting collected, but now a lot of tools have been provided in this standard, where a lot of collaborative approach is being used amongst teachers and parents, teachers and students. Teachers become a facilitator. So looking at the entire satisfaction of emotional quotient, this standard majorly around 10 to 15% focuses on beneficiary satisfaction, and that will quench the thirst of emotional quotient.
Yeah, thank you. Very beautifully said in terms of SQAA. So it's this 10% of beneficiary satisfaction, but there are components of beneficiary satisfaction in every domain.
Correct.
So are you involving the children, the parents, the teachers? So that element, I think, exists in all the domains and subdomains. Yes. So I'm glad the emotional quotient of everyone is being kept in mind, so that we create happy schools also.
Yes.
Right? Not only system-driven schools, but also happy schools.
Correct.
Yes. Without the threat, without the sword hanging over their heads.
Absolutely. Very, very facilitative way of handling it.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Madhu. So, Kavita, this leads me to that question on that, we expect the moon. We want absolutely the highest level from our schools, but schools are struggling with their own specific issues, especially in current scenario. It was there earlier also, but more so now, in terms of fee issues, in terms of availability of staff, in terms of infrastructure. There is sometimes drought in certain areas, flood in certain areas, technology challenges, and in recent times, of course, the pandemic. And leaders are, kind of becoming a punching bag for everyone, and they are just managing schools, just about literally managing schools. So with your experience of working with diverse schools who are at different learning levels, how do you bring about a shift from managing schools to running quality schools?
Thanks, Kalpana. I think that's absolutely the reason why we do what we do. I mean, the whole idea of getting into a space where you can support school leaders to use assessment as a tool, school assessment as a tool for leadership is exactly the difference between managing your resources, whatever you have, because those are given to you. And let's not forget that a lot of school leaders are not, they don't have full agency on their schools. They don't run their own budgets necessarily. Some of them don't run their human resourcing. So teachers are sort of given to them, and there's a certain amount of protocol that's required to be able to spend that money or make decisions. There's a whole lot of they're bound by a lot of things, so they're not free agents completely. But there are lots of spaces of freedom that they do have. In terms of being able to create that program, the pedagogical program for their schools, to be able to work with teachers on how children can learn, to think about what kind of a culture of a classroom really is required. Now, being able to do that says that, first of all, you have to be able to find that as your sort of free space where you can make that difference. And then when you have that sense that, okay, I can lead this space, to be able to say, what does a good classroom look like for my school? What is it that I can take to the zenith in the school that I have right now? Say, for example, you probably have heard this a lot, that there's less variability across schools and more variability within schools. So every school will have good teachers. So every school will have students who do well, but the issue is, within that school, does every child have the same learning experience? That is not necessary, right? So some children may, a lot of people would say, get lucky and get a teacher that they kind of really match with and vibe with, and the teacher is good for them. And then they go into the next year, and perhaps their teacher who's not that inspiring.
Kavita,
of course, try and do the best that they can, but they may be younger than the others, so they may not be motivated because it's something happening in their lives, something that's, they're also human beings. You can't expect everyone to operate.
Yeah, I think, Kavita, your voice is cracking and some connectivity issue. Yeah, some connectivity issue, your voice is cracking, but never mind, go ahead. When I skip to the next question, you can check. Yeah. Kavita, we seem to have lost you.
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that when you have to shift to a space where you say, this is what the best is happening in my school. Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, Kavita, you can check. You can check. Yeah, you can check your connection. I'll come back to you again.
Are you able to hear me
okay?
now?
I'm able to hear you, but your voice is cracking. Can I get back to you again? Meanwhile, you can check your connection. Yeah?
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I heard, so what I just heard from Kavita, I think what she was trying to say is...
Yeah, sure.
So what Kavita was trying to say is that within the school, there's a lot of variability. And as leaders, we need to understand the spaces of freedom and work with our teachers accordingly so that, our students learn. And also underlying these policies that we have, they should be more humane and understanding of what we are doing in our schools. And what I could kind of conclude is that our leaders will definitely have to become great pedagogical leaders in order to understand what's happening in the classroom. So we are not just managing schools, but running quality schools. We'll need to understand what ticks or clicks for our child so that no child is left behind. So I think for that, in case as leaders, we are not really equipped to handle pedagogical leadership, we need to update ourselves. This is something which I could understand. But we'll come back to Kavita later and she can add on to it. So Sharad, my question is to Sharad. None of us knows what the working world will be and what it will look like when our 3 years old pass out of schools and colleges. All we know is that the realities are going to be very different from the world today or from the world where our teachers and our parents, the way that they learned. It's going to be very different for our children. How is NCRT gearing to address the 21st century learner, whether it's students or teachers or parents?
Yes, Kalpana, this is a big challenge. It has been challenging. Giving quality education always is a challenge before any organization, our schools, and our school teachers. But what is more important in the present scenario is the pandemic has catapulted our problems. The problems have become manifold, and many such problems which were not visualized earlier have come to the fore, and they are posing bigger challenges to us. Now, what the world will be after 3 years or 5 years, what would be the professions which our children will be preparing for, what would be the skills, our skill sets our children will be needing, is not known. And what amount of studies or the effort or content they have to put up in their brains is not known. So, keeping in this mind, the NCRT is gearing up for this, and in fact, it is well geared up. You all must have been aware of the National Achievement Survey. So, National Achievement Survey was for classes 3, 5, 8, and in 2017, the survey was held for more than 2.2 million schools on one single day in all over the schools of the country, and we had district wise reports also available on our website. So what is unique was that our surveys were not, we realized that too much of content load is putting so much of pressure on the students, on the parents, and on the system as a whole. So that at time it was decided that let us think of a paradigm shift from the content to the competencies, for the development of competencies. So that National Achievement Survey, which was supposed to be a dipstick test for knowing the health of the system, basically assessment, that brought forth many of the discrepancies or many of the things which our children were lacking upon, and they gave lot of food for thought for creating certain interventions in the schools. And with district wise availability of the scorecard, we were in a position to design the interventions better. The policy maker had better access to the information. The schools, all stakeholders had, since this information was in the public domain. So after that, realizing this, since we were prepared this survey was on basis of learning outcomes. NCRT defined in the Right to Education Act, there was a mention of learning outcomes, but learning outcomes as such were not defined. We never had any defined document. NCRT put up all the efforts and brought in a beautiful document, that is learning outcomes for elementary schools, which have been disseminated all over the country, and it is being followed in the schools, followed by learning outcomes for secondary stage also. The beauty of these document is that it is not putting a pressure of content on the children. It is mainly thinking in terms of developing the skills and the competencies. Once you master certain skills or certain skill sets and develop a competencies, the same type of competencies are going to be used again and again in all the subjects. So once teachers, now once a document is there, it always, like Purohit ji said, that change management you talked about, so change or shifting to something new is always difficult. So we created guidelines, we created posters, we created handbooks, and now we have come up with exemplars, problems, how to, and then various pedagogical process, how to achieve those learning outcomes, how to make them achievable in a stipulated time. Because whenever something new happens, the challenge comes that how to cover up the syllabus within the stipulated time. So various strategies, how to go up with those strategies, how those transactional strategies, and how to prepare children, how to prepare the teachers to address to various learning styles of the children. And even these documents are specially sensitive for children with special needs. They have special sections in this document that how the curriculum or how the class could be adapted for the special learners in the classroom, and how we can help them in achieving learning outcomes. After that, and then of course we had now training of teachers, that is continuous professional development, which the NEP 2020 also talks about, a massive program with the in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, the NISHTA. I'm sure all of you are aware of. We have launched, and we've been training teachers. Before the pandemic, it was an offline, face to face. Now even in the pandemic, during pandemic also, we train. This capacity building of Andhra Pradesh teachers was done through online mode of Nishtha. And now we are in the process of launching Nishtha secondary and Nishtha for teachers for foundational courses. Then again, the pandemic again brought forth the necessity for development of more and more e-contents. When the teachers shifted to this medium, the problem for preparing, although the teachers were best, maybe they were very good at their subject and face-to-face transaction, but the problem there was for creating a content. So the CIT at NCRT created a lot of e-content, energized textbooks. We had a devoted channel, Swayam Prabha, Kishore Manch, wherein we had classes for all the classes. In the during pandemic also, according to the academic calendar, the classes went on, and lot of material before the pandemic also in the National Repository of Open Educational Resources was stocked, and that material for use of everybody, all stakeholders was there, not only in English and Hindi but in regional languages also.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
that availability. And one more thing, that is we created energized textbook on Diksha platform. There's a lot of content which is accessible to all, and under the PME Vidya channel we have dedicated 12 channels for classes 1 to 12. They are working. We have everyday classes for all the students, and they are accessible through various other channels also, and free of cost. So there are a few initiatives which we have taken.
Wonderful.
There are a lot of initiatives. I think if I try, I will exceed the time.
We will have one more webinar on that. But thank you so much. I think our school leaders will really benefit from all the interventions, and we do hope that all the interventions that you are providing would cater to the skills and competencies to be developed. But I'm sure our leaders would also be keen on knowing whether the content is going to be cut down or the syllabus is going to be cut down, so that we focus more on skill building and competency building in classrooms, right? So thank you, Sharath, for that. My question is to Sanjay now. Reaching out to diverse schools, bringing about changes in mental models of parents, educationists, we've been talking about that for almost last 40-45 minutes, enabling the leaders to cultivate a self-sustaining environment. That means leading from within, all right? In itself is going to be a challenge because of various reasons. How do you think technology, because you are into digital transformation also, so how do you think technology will help in connecting, being a catalyst, reaching out to a large number of schools in order to scale the entire process to bring about equality consciousness in schools?
So technology can only amplify human intent. It cannot replace it. The culture of quality consciousness has to be driven by the education system leadership across all levels, from school to district to state and even at the national level. When we want to connect with others to learn and improve, we learn how to use technology, not the other way around. And so if our leaders want to connect with other school leaders, technology can help. Now, Aristotle had once famously said that we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. So once there's an intent for excellence driven by leadership, technology can help convert that intent into a daily habit for everyone across the education ecosystem, rather than a one-time act of doing a one-time assessment or doing a one-time improvement, but doing it in pieces every day. So as we connect and strive for excellence in all aspects of our day-to-day routines, because in the end, change has to happen every day, not once in a while. Technology can augment the capability of our school leaders in many ways. So I'll give you 5 for our discussion purposes. 1, access. Access to resources, expertise that otherwise we can't reach. Second is sharing, the ability to share our knowledge, our expertise with others in the community, because improvement happens not only when you learn, but when you share. The energy to change comes when you share what you have been able to do and others recognize what you have changed. Third is filter the noise, because there's so much happening. Everybody wants to tell you what to do. Everybody wants to change you. So there is so much of noise. How do you cut that noise and use analytics, use data to focus on what is important for the children rather than get swayed by what everybody else thinks you should be improving rather than your ability to understand? And technology can help you do that. Fourth thing is interact with mentors, with guides who can help us become better, because there are a lot of people who want to tell us what to do, but very few people who are willing to guide us what to do. So technology can help us connect. And lastly, of course, create. Our school leaders are very creative. And Sharad talked about the entire example of Diksha and Vidyadan. Imagine the energy of teachers that is going into creating that content and contributing. Why can't we use technology to contribute improvement projects? How to improve a school? How to meet a certain aspect of SQAA? And contributed by the leader saying, I have done it. I know how to do this. You can also do it. And technology allows you to give you the backbone by which we can harvest the collective creativity of the thousands of school leaders across the entire education system. So I think we must see this in the changing context of access to technology, because this conversation will always come up saying, but many people do not have access to technology. This is a reality. In the short term, we need to design our solutions such they work in the online and offline mode. We should not get obsessed by saying everything has to work only in the online mode. But we should also recognize that with increase in availability and affordability of technology, this will change over time. It has changed in our generation, it will continue to change. So it may be useful for leaders across the education system to make efforts to improve our own digital literacy and become better at leveraging technology so that we can achieve the objectives of the national education policy. Because this is not going to be something that will get over in next month or next 12 months. This is a lifelong mission that all of us have. And so the more we learn, the better we would be at handling the unfolding future ahead of us. So these are some thoughts that I had to offer.
Thank you, Sanjay. And interestingly, I think there's always a silver lining somewhere, and a silver lining to the pandemic is that we've been forced to use technology. Who would have thought we would be using Googles and Zoom Meets and WebEx, right? So I recently heard one of the teachers, the school leader had asked the teachers to come to school for a meeting, and the teacher turned around and said, why can't we have it online? So a lot of shifts that are happening. And interestingly, what you said, the first one and important one is access to technology is something that all school leaders will need to review within their own system, and the ability to share, which will bring about an energy in the system and synergy in the system, because everybody is doing their own thing in a very beautiful and creative way. But if everybody gets together and shares that experience, I don't know what else we can create as a resilient society. And filter the noise was wonderful. Sift and sort and use the data. What do we need for my school? Something that may work in, let's say, in a school in Kotkapura is working very beautifully. Why can't I try it out in Noida? Okay, and sharing information, and also to looking at what's important for the kids. So not just doing it because sab kar rahe hain. So it's also important to see your own context of where you are. Interact with mentors, learn and grow, contribute to important projects. So maybe CBSE will help to create a portal where you're sharing the best practices. This worked for me. What worked for you? So the hubs of learning would probably become more active. Sahodyas would become more active, and any other mode that CBSE wishes to utilize. I'm sure the leaders are going to all rally behind and come together as one to ensure that quality consciousness happens in our schools. Thank you, Sanjay, for that. all of us here with our, we all have varied experiences at different levels. Before I move on to the conclusion, Kavita, we missed you out in your previous thing. Is there anything you would like to add?
So I hope now I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yeah, the voice is not cracking, thankfully. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you would like to conclude, yeah.
Yeah, just actually picking up from what everybody has said so far, I think that there is a lot that is possible even in schools where there is no technology and no access to technology, because we've worked also in places where there's not even a telephone line. Forget about getting an internet access. But what we do see is the way to sort of work with the school within a school, because of the variability, is to identify what is happening that is good within the school, and then to work to create systems that will make it possible for everyone to be as good as the best in your school. So that moves the school up, and then you have an aspiration that goes up higher. So it's improvement is a journey that is possible anywhere and everywhere. Doesn't depend upon anything to come from the outside. Yeah.
Wonderful. So we are focusing on intra-competition rather than inter-competition. We say that for our children, but we need to apply it for our schools also, right? That we are finding variables within the school system. So we all have experiences working at different levels, different schools, and schools are at different learning levels on their developmental continuum. But all of us present here, and I'm sure all of those who are watching, have the strong belief in the power of the people. What I can sense is that in this entire almost an hour, we've all been talking about the importance of human resources. So as long as we're able to understand with empathy, compassion, and try and put things together in understanding the current realities and our own limitation, constraints, and strength, I'm sure we're going to go and do wonders. Because I have no doubt about that our school leaders would definitely go out and lead, right? So looking for a quick and last response from all of you here, whether the school is private or government, urban or rural, large or small, what do you think could be the core strengths of our schools that will lead to quality consciousness being embedded in all school practices and policies? What are you hopeful about? We'll start with Kavita.
Sure. I think that's good, because right now my internet seems to be working. So
That's why
I think I think the real thing is that when we are a society that works as a we're very strongly embedded in the idea that we work together, then there are more hands is the best way to do this. And so the whole idea of collaboratives and putting that collaborative culture into a staff room, classroom context is so fundamentally important, because that is the biggest strength of our society. We work together. When we work together, we work really well. That Sathi Bhat Badhana is a really solid idea.
So what you're saying is that one of the strengths of our schools is that they can work in collaboration within their schools, right?
Yes.
And hopefully outside their schools. Yeah.
And whenever we have seen that happen, whether you are an IB school somewhere in a very posh locality, or whether you are in the middle of a forest, the joy that happens when that working together happens, that joy is what actually is the best thing that we can bank on, and the children flourish when joy is available.
I think Madhu had mentioned the word of celebrating together, if I remember that expression. So the celebration of working together and achieving an outcome, right? Okay, Madhu, your last 30 seconds. What are the strengths of our school leaders? What are you hopeful about?
Yeah, see, we have been conducting assessments for the last 14 years, and we have seen that we have conducted assessment in rural schools, urban schools, semi-urban schools. We have seen that each school has their own unique existing practices. So they have their creativity. Each school is a best school or a good school. They have certain strengths. They have certain improvement areas. Now, the school, what they want is somebody to facilitate them, tell them how to take it forward. Then the Inspector Raj. So it is important for all of us that school should be given that hand, that whatever you have in your existing practices, SQAA has been designed with the intent not to curb your creativity, but to enhance your existing practices and then take you on a path of continual improvement of quality. So that's my last statement.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madhu. Sharad, what are you hopeful about? You'll have to unmute yourself, Sharad. You'll have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Einstein had once said, and I would like to quote here, that art of teaching is awakening joy in creative expression and knowledge. So the strength, the core strength of our system, our diverse education system, what I feel from my side is the well-knit system of our schools, number one. Sharing. NEP also talks about school complexes. So that is all again based on sharing and the willingness of our teachers to transform and learn, which was very much evident during the pandemic. They learned, they unlearned so many things, they relearned so many things, they started using the systems, and now they are using it so efficiently, utilizing to the best of their capacity. So I would say the core strength of our system is our teachers, the pivots, our school leaders who have the desire to change the system.
Wonderful. So the attitude and approach of our teachers and school leaders is something that you're hopeful about. That will bring about a change.
Very
Great.
hopeful about that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Sanjay.
So I think what we've been discussing today, the SQAA is a great foundation, but I would offer 3 important core strengths that our school leaders may want to consider. One is clarity. How do you develop clarity on what does it take to create a nurturing environment for our children? Second is capacity in themselves and their teams to sense, make sense, learn and improve repeatedly every day. And third is the courage. The courage to go beyond the normal and strive for excellence under uncertainty. Because uncertainty is here to stay. We are not going to have an environment where everything is sorted out and now we will go and make a change. And that takes courage to go beyond the normal and change when things are in a flux in front of us.
Okay. The 3 C's, right? The clarity, the capacity, and the courage. So light a fire. Light a fire so that the others can follow you, right? So wonderful. I think it's been a very interesting conversation, and I do hope that we'll be able to have more of them in times to come. So thank you, Sanjay, Sharad, Kavita, Madhu, for the meaningful insights and your trust and faith in the school leaders, teachers, whom you feel that yes, they can bring about quality consciousness wherever they are. And a big thank you for kickstarting the first of the webinar series on quality consciousness. And audience, you need not worry. CBSE is also in the process of organizing detailed and specific programs on SQAA to enable you to understand it better. And as Manojji also said in the beginning, once you have gone through the framework, feel free to provide your feed forward. Not just a feedback, but a feed forward suggestions to improve it so that we can make it more effective for you. And the quest for quality continues. So, friends, are you ready to be a part? This is a question for all of us here today. Are you ready to be a part of this transformational journey? Are you rewriting history and being a part of the change that you wish to see? Are you ready to breathe in life into our education system so that we can prepare our children to thrive in the post-industrial era? So I request our technology team to provide us the link and send us their responses live right now. So I request them to share a slide. There is a link given at the bottom of your YouTube description box. This is for the audience. There is a link given in the description box at the bottom of your YouTube where you're watching. And there is a link, Google link for the form. And there is just one question for you to fill up. So please do start. Get into it. Link in. Are you ready to be the change you wish to see in the world? That's the question all of us have for all of us. Are we ready to be the change that we wish to see in the world? There is a link given in the description box where you're watching on the YouTube. Kindly log in to that link and put in your response, whether it is yes, no, or not sure. So let's be a part of this transformational journey and be ready for it. I thank everybody on behalf of CBSE and request Ramandeep to come in, please. She's played a very pivotal and anchoring role for development of SQAA. So thank you, Ramandeep, for providing all of us with the exposure and the learning. And I request you to give your concluding remarks. Meanwhile, the audience, you are expected to also fill in immediately your responses that are you ready to be a transformational leader? Over to Ramandeep. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for beautifully bringing out the importance of school quality assessment through this discussion. Maybe we will not be able to have the live responses, ma'am. We will collect the feedback and I will share with all of you. I take this. Yeah. Great. Now, I take this opportunity to extend gratitude to all who have been working hard to make this webinar a success. To start with, I must thank our respected chairman who graced us with his presence and who has been guiding us throughout. I also extend my gratitude to our keynote speaker, Shri Santosh Sarangiji, who took time out of his busy schedule and shared his thoughts with us. Then moving on, I also thank Dr. Joseph Emmanuel, our Director Academics, who have been always encouraging and supporting us at each and every step. I also thank all our esteemed panelists and our moderator for their presence and contribution in making this webinar a success. Then I also must thank our organizing team who have been working hard from the previously so many days, especially Pragya ma'am, Manish, Sudesh madam, all have been working hard from the previously so many days to make this series a success. Least but not the least, all our participants, our school leaders, our teachers who have been viewing all these webinars and participating in it. Thank you once again for making this series a success. Thank you.
Thank you all. Kalpana Kapoor signing off. Wish you all the best and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all of you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.